National Signing Day. If you are a college football nut, this in America is like a holiday. I mean, I feel like we are celebrating Independence Day, even though there's nothing independent about this. But it's just one of those days that you're kind of glued to your phone, your computer, your TV, whatever you may be watching or following, and you are seeing it as it unfolds. We don't know what's going on. It can be with all the uncertainty in recruiting, transfer portal. It's never ending. So we don't know what's going on. We hear things. Some things are just rumors. But then once it's actually posted, televised, signed, you see that on the dotted line. Their name is signed, letter of intent to go to any university. You then become pumped if it's for your team, or you become upset because they didn't sign with your team. But needless to say, it is like a holiday because we are glued to this. This is something that happens every year, and yet it entertains us every year. There's always something. So that is exactly what happened today, and we are going to break that down for you. But first things first, welcome to Total Sports Talk, where I am your host, Matthew Raridan, and besides me, as always, are my co-hosts. First, we have David Street,
Thanks, Matthew. I hate it here.
and we've got Ed Smith, who's happy as can be.
Hook 'em.
It just works out perfect because two of our hosts here are we have Texas fan and a Florida fan, and it just so happens that we had a Florida Gator commit end up flipping to Texas. So there's a lot of bad blood here. I'm glad that we are in different states because this could have been a very ugly set right now. But it happens. It happens. It's unfortunate, but it does happen, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about here. And I just want to start with actually the teams up top, and we all know who they are. And one of them is the back-to-back defending champs, although they will not have the chance this year to do it. But that is Georgia. And we also are going to talk about the Ohio State as well. So, David, I want you to cover both those teams for us right now.
Well, as we all know, Kirby Smart has a reputation not only as an elite coach, but as an elite recruiter as well. And in fact, actually, for a while, Kirby Smart was viewed as more of an elite recruiter and an excellent coach, but not so much an elite coach. But his ability to recruit has never been in question, as his Georgia Bulldogs once again will more than likely finish with the top class. And if you don't know how good their class has been, they just recently had their prize commit, Dylan Raiola, flip to Nebraska. And for most programs, that would be a death blow. But Georgia still stayed at number one. That's how good they've been. And really, this shouldn't even matter to Georgia at because they recently won back to back national championships with a walk on in Stetson Bennett, and Carson Beck, who is their starting quarterback right now, wasn't a very high 4-star recruit. So when it comes to the quarterback position, Georgia has nothing to worry about there at all. And also, they flipped safety KJ Bolden away from Florida State. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when KJ Bolden initially committed to Florida State, I was shocked by that. I thought for sure that he was a Georgia lock, literally in Kirby Smart's uh, backyard. It seems like Kirby doesn't miss out on Georgia guys. So when he signed, or not signed, when he committed to Florida State, I was kind of taken aback. So I'm definitely not surprised to see him flip back to his home state dogs. Now, as for Ohio State, I think the main storyline with Ohio State, really for the past year or two, is what's going to happen with Jeremiah Smith, because other teams like Florida and Florida State were in talks of getting him. There was talks about, oh, maybe Jeremiah Smith will flip to one of these Florida schools. Well, he hasn't, and it seems like he's going to sign with Ohio State. Although, if if I am correct, he hasn't signed his LOI yet. I don't think he has. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong there, but I don't think he has signed yet. But if he hasn't, I think he will still sign with Ohio State, just because the Buckeyes have a great track record of developing elite wide receiver talent. And let's talk about these recruits just for a minute here. KJ Bolden, the best safety in the country, but it's not just what he can do on defense. He's also versatile on offense as well. And when you talk about Jeremiah Smith, he's a wide receiver as the number one player in the country per 24/7 Sports. Do you want to know the last time 24/7 Sports had a wide receiver as the number one player? Well, I would like to know that answer too, because there is no information. Like 24/7 Sports doesn't have rankings beyond 2010 or whatever. For whatever reason. But there's a reason why Jeremiah Smith is the number one player in the country. Just watch his tape, okay? The guy is always open because he is a speed demon. So huge of him, or huge of Ohio State to hold on to Jeremiah Smith for now, because we know in the age of NIL, anything can happen. As a Florida fan, I probably know more about that than both of you. But for now, kudos to Ohio State for holding on to him. And kudos to Georgia, as much as it hurts me to say this, for flipping a big time recruit from FSU.
Yeah, if I had to put my money, this is just a guess here, but I feel really confident about this. The last wide receiver that potentially could have been number one, maybe Calvin Johnson. I mean, Calvin Johnson was a freak from the beginning, and he was very highly decorated. I mean, I know he didn't go to a big time college at the time, but Calvin Johnson might have been up there. I mean, he was just that good, especially coming out of high school. Pretty sure he was the Gatorade Player of the Year as well. So, but I don't know. But that's if I had to put my money on a wide receiver who at least was the closest, it would probably be him. But
I mean, if you want to talk about from a pure talent standpoint, you could argue that Calvin Johnson is the best receiver to play the game. Key word there, argue. Maybe you take Randy Moss over Calvin Johnson, but from a pure athletic talent standpoint, there weren't a lot of receivers better than CJ.
he was a nightmare. I mean, I've seen triple coverage, even quadruple coverage on him, and he's still come down with the ball. And for those of you who don't remember, I mean, he retired early. So he still had a lot of years left probably to play, and he was a big boy. So I mean, it would have been nice to see him play more because he was fun to watch every Sunday. But
Yeah.
did you want to say something really quick, Ed?
I was just going to make mention on Calvin Johnson. If he didn't wind up having those feet problems, uh, who knows what could have happened as far as the record book was concerned? Because he was the offense for Detroit while he was there. There was nothing else around him, but that's all was also a detriment to him, reaching his potential as well.
Exactly.
Y'all
Exactly.
think last thing about Calvin Johnson? Y'all think he kicks himself on occasion? Like, oh, Detroit, y'all finally decided to have a good team now. Why couldn't you be good when I was there? They had a couple of good seasons here and there, but they weren't consistent.
I'm sh
Exactly.
I'm sure it's crossed his mind, but, I know what's crossed someone else's mind, and that's Nick Saban, and that is, man, can we just be back at number 1 for recruiting? I mean, Kirby is just killing us, but if I know Nick like I think I do, he's fine being in the playoffs right now. I mean, he's looking for that national championship, and there's nothing sweeter than that, and that's why you recruit. That's why you want these top recruiting classes so you could eventually have your team there. So, Saban's happy where he's at, but, he is at the number 2 spot once again behind Georgia, but Alabama, Texas, and I'm not talking about their matchup this year and potential matchup coming this year. I'm talking about their recruiting class, and none better than to talk about it than Ed.
Yeah, I appreciate the kudos on that. What I will say with Alabama is it's another ho hum number 2 recruiting class. Here it is. 55 years in the making. Yet another number 2 recruiting class for the for the Crimson Tide. And with this time, they did it a little differently than what I've seen them do overall. They really only got 3 of the 5-star recruits. Only 2 of them actually signed today. The other one's waiting until February. And that's Ryan Williams, the wide receiver out of Saraland, Alabama. He's waiting until February. But they did get a signature down for Julian Sayin, the quarterback from Carlsbad, California, Jalen Mbakwe, the cornerback from Pinson, Alabama. Saban really focused on the southern states, but he wasn't afraid to go outside of Alabama in and of itself. There's been a lot of talk about Alabama being one of the hotbed states of recruiting. The average distance from Tuscaloosa that they have in the recruits is over 660 miles. So
Mm.
that's a wide net to cast when you're talking about getting the best players. But, you know, instead of only getting the 5 stars, they got 15 4-stars. These are players that are really top end, but they still have room to develop. And, when you're talking about Nick Saban and how he has his players, they develop. And they develop from what a high school kid should be to what a college football player should be to what an NFL player should be. And that's really the pitch. You're going to win, you're going to develop, and you're going to get to the NFL. I mean, what better pitch is there? Because there's really not many schools that can say the same thing that Nick Saban has said over the past decade plus, that he's been at Alabama and in the SEC as a whole, is you're going to develop and you're going to get better and you're going to have a better shot at getting beyond your college playing career than what you are, if you go someplace else.
Well, and
You're,
Ed,
yeah,
yeah, to add to your point about Alabama recruiting kids from out of state, well, let's also not forget that 2 of the best quarterbacks that Nick Saban has ever had, Tua Tagovailoa and Bryce Young, both came from Hawaii and California, respectively, and neither of those places are not exactly close to Alabama.
True. They are a plane ride. And but I will say that Saban and their recruiting director Bob Welton, you can't forget about the recruiting directors when it comes to the signing days. They had 7 of the top 100 signed to Alabama today, so that is a huge get. To Georgia's point, and part of the reason why they're going to be number 1 in this recruiting cycle, they had 10. So they had 10% of the overall top 100 go to Georgia. It was 7 to Alabama. So it's everything. It's just another day in the life of Alabama Crimson Tide football. But when you start talking about the development of players, Saban also develops coaches. We know he's done a great job at developing coaches. And one of the coaches that he developed is Steve Sarkisian. And he has taken the reins here at Texas. And right now they're sitting at number 4. So just two spots behind Saban in the Texas recruiting, where they got 21 commits, 4 5-stars signed today, and still with that same 14 4-stars. We did lose a recruit, Aaron Hampton, to Alabama, but that was the last one. Every other recruit that we had committed signed before noon today. So when it's all gas no brakes, they were ready to go. They were ready to go first thing this morning. So kudos to Sarkisian for doing that. And it's the 4th recruiting cycle. So this is absolutely Sark's team. And he's capitalizing on the momentum that, going from, the 5-7 season to a bowl game last year to the playoff this year. That train is it's picking up steam. They're putting more coal in the fire, and there's really no stopping him at this point. They were able to fill needs at secondary and the wide receiver room and restock the pantry for the offensive and defensive lines, which is a huge get. In fact, they got the number one defensive player in the state, Colin Simmons, to come here as the number one recruit of this class. He's the anchor, and everything just kind of begins with that. You know, working inside, working inside out. That's what we talk about all the time. If you can control the center of the game, you're going to get better on the outside, and that's what Sark is recruiting to at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Sarkisian being I'll say like a prodigy of Nick Saban. Nick Saban has proven time and time again that he can develop coaches, and Sark is one of them. And I'm really loving what he's doing down there in Austin. And just this recruiting class shows it enough. So I'm very impressed with Texas. Everyone wants to, and I know Ed wants to say we're back. And this right here is one of those things that that shows that but there's more that comes to it. So, but it is nice to see. It's nice to see Texas, back in this relevancy of not only recruiting but being in the college football playoffs too. It is a good sight to see, and that's not a dig on your Longhorns, Ed, but it's good for college football, especially with them
Absolutely.
going into the SEC next year.
Texas being good is good for college football.
And there's a school that I want to talk about here, and that's Florida State. And Florida State, as we know, people are still talking about it here and there, them being snubbed, or them, maybe changing conferences, in the end of an era with Jordan Travis at the helm. And how are things going to look for them? They keep in mind they still finish undefeated. This is a team that has proven that they belong there, but the recruiting class, they kind of fell off a little bit today. At the end of the day today, they did end up ranking 9th nationally. And their biggest signing, I'll say official signing, is quarterback Luke Cromenhook. And I may have pronounced his name wrong, but that is how I'm interpreting it. And he's out of Savannah, Georgia. So, here you have a Georgia product where you would think that, all right, he's definitely going to Georgia, right? But no, he did end up committing to Florida State. As David covered, their biggest recruit that they were anticipating was KJ Bolden. And he did end up flipping to Georgia, which makes the most sense. But Florida State was kind of, running, they were on that high, like, wow, we're going to get KJ Bolden here. I mean, this is pretty dope. And Florida State, they are a great school. And if everyone remembers, Florida State is the one that initially claimed DBU. I mean, this is Deion Sanders, alma mater here. And this is a school that, that's what they wanted. And so to have someone like him would have been huge for Florida State, but it makes sense that he flipped back to flipped to Georgia, respectively. But it was shocking that he committed there in the first place. But Florida State did end the day with 15 4-star recruits to go with 7 3-star recruits. So Mike Norvell, he still is showing that Florida State wants to remain there, and you could see that with his recruits that he has signed, but no 5 stars though. And I'm sure that was a big thing for Florida State. But come February, that could change. We'd have to look into a little bit more. But Florida State did fall within the rankings to now be at 9. So, but the other school I want to talk about is my school, and that's Oregon. And actually, I believe Ed was talking about earlier about when you play for Alabama, you have a good sense that you may make it to the next level because Nick Saban, Alabama, has shown that. Another school that has shown that as of recent is Ohio State. And what I want to get to is you have teams like Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, where once you've kind of committed, you're verbal committed, you're not usually flipping. Well, shocking, it happened today. And that is Jeremiah McClellan, who was verbally committed to Ohio State, flipped and came to Oregon today. And this was big. This is a big recruit, 4-star wide receiver. And if you think of Ohio State, I mean, you have Chris Olave, You have Michael Thomas. You have now Marvin Harrison Jr. These are legit wide receivers, and we already know Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have a great NFL career. It's just kind of already one of those that's kind of predestined, bearing, God forbid, any bad injury. But that's what Ohio State produces. And so for a receiver to flip from that is very shocking. So I'm very happy that the Oregon Ducks, my Oregon Ducks, did pull this off. But they had a phenomenal day, guys. I mean, they hauled in 2 5-star recruits and 18 4-star recruits and 5 3-star recruits. I mean, their biggest pickups were their 2 5-star recruits in Aiden Breland and Elijah Rushing. And I don't know if you guys have seen online, but a lot of people are already talking about it. I'm not talking about Oregon Duck people. I'm talking about actual analysts with them going to the Big Ten and bringing in those 2 recruits for the defensive line. They're saying that that could be one of the best defensive lines in the country next year, just because of those 2 5-star recruits, if they can transfer what they have done from high school to the college level. But that is a big if. There are some people that can't hack it. It is a different ball game, just like it is coming from college to the pros. So that is very big there. But if you everyone knows, and if you don't, when Dan Lanning came to Oregon, it was he's going to bring the SEC to the Pac-12 or to Oregon. That's exactly what he's doing, guys. 8 of Oregon's top 10 recruits that signed today, all defense. That sounds a lot like the SEC to me, and that sounds a lot like Dan Lanning to me. When have you ever heard, this is me as an Oregon fan saying this, have you heard Oregon and defense together? You don't. You hear Oregon and offense. You hear Oregon and speed, efficiency. You don't hear Oregon and defense. And the fact that this is what's happening right now is a very big deal. It really is. And I love to see it. I am all for it. Dan Lanning is going to be an incredible coach if he isn't already. And I'm seeing it where it starts first, and that's the recruiting trail. He is going into these high schools. He's getting to know these young adults that he's getting ready to bring to Eugene. And they love him. And I don't, and I can see why. So they finished the day 6 overall, and I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed with this Oregon Ducks team, not only on the recruiting trail, but within the transfer portal. They are making big moves, and Dylan Gabriel being one of them, and Dante Moore coming back to Oregon. I say coming back, he never officially signed here, but he was one of those commits that end up flipping
You
to.
could not live with your own failure. And
Yes.
where did that bring you? Back to me.
Exactly. But one of the things that you are seeing online is that Oregon is kind of playing chess a little bit because they are lining up for the future. They already have their 2024 quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. He's only eligible for 1 more year. Then you have Dante Moore with 3 years of eligibility. So, I mean, they are lining this up. And I love it, especially going into the Big Ten. Just like Texas going into the SEC, things are looking very bright for Oregon. So, yeah, those are the teams that I think we just really kind of wanted to talk about because they were up there at the top. But at the same time, there are still teams that maybe are flying under the radar that aren't being talked a whole lot, or maybe they are, and to some people. But we wanted to talk about some more specific teams of what they did today on National Signing Day and how things are looking. So, Ed, I mean, is there a team that you kind of have to watch?
Oh, absolutely. There's a team I'm keeping an eye on, and it is da 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 dun, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Yeah, go Big Red. And really, it all comes down to revolving around Matt Rule, because Matt Rule is one of those coaches where he will take a program that is not doing so hot, and oh my goodness, Nebraska has not been doing so hot, and it'll take him a year or two to get his feet set, and then off and running they go. So on a day like today, they got that major flip from Georgia, Dylan Raiola, as their 1 5-star recruit. They got 7 4-star, and the real backbone of this class is going to be 21 3-star recruits. That is Matt Rule's wheelhouse. That is what he does. He takes those players that, those high end programs uh, do not go after, and gets them to all play together as a team and puts them in positions that work well for who they are. Not necessarily, who they were in these small towns in middle America, all together. They were big stars being a wide receiver, but they're really better at playing safety, that type of thing. It's all about the development, not only of the kid, but of the football player and the team unity. And Matt Rule, I've seen it happen with him twice in college, Temple and at Baylor, up close and personal at the Baylor stop that he had. He is awakening the beast. Uh, with those other stops that he had one win his first year at Temple. He had 2 wins his first year at Baylor, and he had 5 wins his first year at Nebraska. You get Nebraska rolling, it's look out everybody, because that is a program that they have all the resources that any of these other schools that we're talking about have. That's one thing that's not talked about with Nebraska is they have the resources that anybody else in the country has. They just haven't had the coach that can bring them together and bring prominence back to Husker Nation. That it's the Memorial Field is the third largest city in Nebraska every Saturday afternoon. That it's the longest running joke ever, but it still holds true. The biggest question with him is, with his history of jumping jobs, is he going to stay when they get back on track? Is he going to see the fruits of his labor? Because Temple, he goes to Baylor. Baylor, he goes to the NFL. That didn't work out, so he's back in college. So if he does the same good job of building Nebraska back to prominence, I think he needs to stay there. He needs to continue to recruit there. And then eventually they will not have to go after, these low hanging fruit around the Midwest. They will be able to, as a national brand, pick up whoever they want across the entire country.
Yeah, Ed, let me just chime in real quick. I absolutely think that Matt Rule will stay at Nebraska for the long run unless Nebraska fires him, because you look at the moves that he's made before, they made complete sense. I mean, going from Temple to Baylor was a step up. Going from Baylor to the NFL was a step up. And then turns out NFL is not really his style. So he comes back to college. But people forget, because Nebraska has been a laughing stock for so long, but Nebraska is a blue blood. I feel like that term gets thrown around quite a bit, but when you're talking about the programs that are blue bloods, Nebraska absolutely is a blue blood. Like you take their history, their numbers, and you put them up against the rest of college football. Nebraska is up there with the best, right? They've been down on their luck for quite some time, but sometimes all it takes is a spark, and maybe for Nebraska, maybe Matt Rule is that spark that they finally needed.
If I remember correctly, Nebraska still is number 8 in all time program wins in college football.
Yeah,
Yeah. Gosh.
yeah, no, they're like I said, like they're a blue blood. Their numbers are elite, which I think part of it is because they took advantage of college football back when college football was, what it was back then. So kudos to them for that. But I think there's a reason why they haven't been elite in so long. Because no offense to Nebraska fans, but most elite players don't want to go to the state of Nebraska. I mean, sure, you landed Rayola, but Rayola is also a legacy recruit, so you can't forget that. But listen, I don't hate Nebraska at all, and I really, truly, sincerely hope they do get back to relevancy, because they need it probably more than anybody right now.
Yeah, do you guys remember when Scott Frost was there?
Dude,
Oh
we
yeah.
all
What?
thought Scott
Oh yeah.
Frost was the real deal. And why
Yeah.
wouldn't we think that? Like the guy revives UCF. We
Uh-huh.
we had no reason to think that he was going to flop at Nebraska.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Oh, you mean as the coach? I remember him as the player.
Well,
player,
that
yeah.
too.
Well, as far as the laughing stock goes, it was when he was the coach there. But
Yeah.
speaking of cool last names, no pun intended, actually all pun intended. I'm going to talk about another cool last name head coach, and that is Hugh Freeze. My eyes obviously are on Auburn right now, and guys, they're killing it right now on the recruiting floor. This came out of left field for a lot of people. I mean, uh, we all, the three of us, know a couple Auburn fans, and I bet they were even shocked by this too. But a lot of people are now putting their faith and their trust in Hugh Freeze, and honestly, guys, rightfully so. I really like Hugh Freeze. I love his style, and I think this is the perfect fit for him at Auburn. And what he's doing right now with the recruiting class is phenomenal because it wasn't expected. And unfortunately, Auburn is, they're like little brother to Alabama, and this just is helping them even more inch closer and closer to that status. And I love seeing it. Auburn finished this last year with a very unfortunate 4th and 30, essentially a Hail Mary pass that made up for the pick six for Alabama, and sorry, the kick six. But they ended the season 6-6. Auburn did, and now with this recruiting class, possibly big targets in the transfer portal, Hugh Freeze and the Tigers, they may be onto something here, guys. They are all the way up to now 7th in the nationally with this recruiting class. So Hugh Freeze, I mean, props to him. I This is his first full year, guys. For those of you who don't realize that, he is now really officially taking over the helm here because he has a recruiting class to himself, and there's still a couple years that come to it, just like David knows with Billy Napier. There comes a couple more years that you need under your belt for this to really fully be your team. But this is his first full year to actually start recruiting players out of high school, and he's doing a great job. So Auburn, they are on the rise, and I love to see it.
Well, Matthew, one team that I'm looking at is Miami because don't look now, guys, but the Miami Hurricanes are third in recruiting per 24/7 Sports. They skyrocketed up to that ranking, in large part because they flipped Adarius Hayes from the University of Florida and they flipped Armando Blunt from FSU today. So to flip big time recruits from two of your in-state rivals is absolutely massive for Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes. And listen, say whatever you want about Mario Cristobal, he may not be an elite head coach, although to be fair, Miami did go from 5-7 to 7-5, so they are making progress. So I will give kudos to Mario there. But he is whatever
No
you
doubt, and they're 8-4.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you, Ed. I don't disagree with you. But progress is progress at the end of the day. But certainly nobody should question his ability to recruit. That's what he's always been known for. And you, Matthew, you being the Oregon fan, you know good and well just how much of an elite recruiter Mario is.
Yeah, absolutely. Mario Cristobal, he has a way with these athletes coming out of high school, and it's even showing even at a new school. So it's not necessarily the school itself where Oregon is always, a top target. All these high school guys want to wear Nike, but it shows that even in Miami, he is still bringing in top recruits. I mean, Miami is 3 guys. We're talking about Miami here. I mean, we're not talking about Ohio State being at 3 or Texas being at 3. We're talking about Miami. So this is very big for the Canes. So
Absolutely, the Canes are another one of those dormant programs right now. You know, with along with Nebraska
Mhm.
because they're a program that I've seen ever since I was a kid, them just be dominant for stretches. But, they've kind of faltered over the years, just here and there. And to see them come back and be part of the fold of the big Florida Three,
Mhm.
that is big for college football. It's good for the game.
Well,
Have all three of those teams, relevant again.
well, in fairness too, um, Nebraska being a doormat, I think is more understandable than Miami because generally speaking, nobody wants to play in the middle of cornfields in Nebraska. But Miami, like
You
Miami,
shut
isn't
your
a
mouth.
hey,
What
I
is
like
it, the
corn. Okay,
greens?
does that redeem me? Nebraska fans, I'm sorry. I've been railing, I've been hating on y'all, and I know as a Florida fan, I shouldn't. I have nothing against you guys. I'm just having way too much fun here, okay? But no, I don't hate you guys at all. I have no reason to. But Miami isn't a recruiting hotbed, so Miami kind of being stuck in the basement is a that's a complete shocker. It's been a complete shocker, but it seems like under Mario, they're turning things around. And gentlemen, I had another thought, and it totally flew past me, but must not be that important.
David,
Yeah.
can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah,
You know when the Orange Bowl closed?
the stadium. Yeah,
Yeah,
wasn't it right
I can't
after?
remember.
Wasn't it? And I could be wrong here. Wasn't it right after Miami won their last title in 2001?
Okay. Do you think
Like
that could have some play the in the football program having to have a 40-minute bus ride to go from campus to the stadium that they play in now as opposed to it being on campus?
that's possible. And thank you, Ed, because now I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say that like Miami fans talk a big game on social media, but they're nowhere to be found in that rented stadium of theirs. But no, that is a fair point, Ed. That is a fair point.
I I have an interesting point here, and I'll see if you guys agree with this. But with how Cristobal and the Hurricanes are recruiting right now, if I think Van Dyke transferring out was actually a good thing,
Yeah.
and here's why. I think if I'm Cristobal, I'm reaching out to Cam Ward. Honestly, I think Cam Ward would be phenomenal there, and I think it may come down to the two Florida schools, and I'm not talking about the Gators. I'm talking about Florida State, and I'm talking about Miami. I think he would do great at both those programs, but the way that Miami's playing, Cristobal really wants to show these recruits that he means business. I'm bringing in Cam Ward, and he has yet to even hint where he's going or where he wants to go, and I'd be interested to see. I mean, what would you guys think? What's your take on that? Cam Ward at the U.
I mean, I've heard the same thing, so I have no reason to not believe that.
Cam Ward is going to be an asset no matter where he goes. So
$1 million
whatever,
asset.
yeah, and it's just who's willing to write the check for that asset.
Well,
That's a big part of it.
Miami
And
can afford
I
it.
would imagine that he's looking at what this signing day looks like
Hmm.
before making a call as well, simply because you don't want to go into a program that is already going to have three or four quarterbacks on the roster that they just brought in,
Hmm.
you know, to become a player that still has 2 years of eligibility. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it too. Is he's going to have 2 years to play. If that quarterback room is so full, you don't want to go there because you're going to have too much competition for to stay there and be comfortable with where you are, and you
Right.
just can't do that.
Hmm.
I don't know about you guys. Maybe this is the hockey fan in me breaking out, but every time I hear the name Cam Ward, I think of the guy who was the netminder for the Carolina Hurricanes for all those years.
I thought you were going to say that when I said the Canes. I was like, uh oh.
Well, that's actually hilarious. Like you have Cam Ward with the Hurricanes, and
Uh-huh.
then you have Cam Ward with the Hurricanes, probably.
Yeah. Well,
So
to be
I never even
determined.
I never put those together. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Well, speaking of to be determined and what's next, we're going to change not necessarily topics, but more so leagues. We're going to jump from NCAA college football to now the NFL. And there are question marks around several teams right now on next year. I know we are still battling it out right now for playoffs, but these teams, for the most part, are not. And the first team I want to talk about, that's the New York Jets, even though they should be the New Jersey Jets. But New York Jets, um, Aaron Rodgers is going to be activated, but he is not going to play a game this year. So this is all about next year. How's he going to look? I mean, this is a guy who just tore his Achilles. And, well, as a quarterback, you're going to use your Achilles every single play. So how is he going to bounce back from this? I think the smart thing is he does not play this year. That is probably the smartest thing that him and the Jets can do. Continue to heal and recover from this injury. That way, you are close to full strength, if not at full strength, come next year. So, Aaron Rodgers, I think he will come back next year. I think these Jets have a lot to prove. But with him being hurt, I know it was week one, and maybe the Jets could have made some adjustments, but I think that everyone is going to be safe as far as their jobs go going into next year because it is kind of to be determined how this Jets team can do when fully healthy. So as far as Nathaniel Hackett goes, I think going into next year, his job security is going to be fine because they want Nathaniel Hackett with Aaron Rodgers, and they want to see what this team can do going into next year. Robert Saleh, I think clearly is probably going to get extended here eventually. Even if the Jets maybe don't do the best next year, I think they really feel. I watched the Jets on um, Hard Knocks this year. Saleh is their guy. They believe in him, and they think he's going to be the next big deal as a head coach. So I see them extending him there. But the Jets, they can't just keep rolling with the Green Bay Packers 2.0 with Lazard and Randall Cobb there. They need receivers. They have Garrett Wilson, who is a great receiver for Aaron Rodgers, but they need more than just him. So I look to them to possibly draft a wide receiver here in the draft. It's not going to be shy, that's for sure. There is a lot of talent coming out in this next draft, and offensive line help. You can't have your multi-million-dollar quarterback getting hurt. They're going to look to protect him. So I think they really want to establish that identity of we want this offense to really click before they really start piecing together their defense. So guys, they got Sauce Gardner there too. So their defense is still going to look good. I know it's not just one player; you have to have all 11 guys, but I think they're going to first try to attack this offense and fix that first. So. Jets, we'll see next year, but that's what I think they'll do next year. But the Bears, what are they going to do next year, Ed?
Well, it's kind of a conundrum with them because you've got a quarterback that hasn't played terribly, but you've got an organization that is absolute garbage. So, what do you do from there? I mean, the head coach, Matt Eberflus, did anybody really expect him to do a great job as a head coach? I don't think we did. I think we all expected kind of at least he's not uh, the last head coach. Name escapes me. At least he's not that guy. That was with Trubisky that whole reign right there.
Oh,
So
it was a Nagy, I think you're thinking
Nagy,
of.
Matt Nagy,
Yeah.
yeah. So they went to another Matt Eberflus.
Mhm.
Uh, so they brought in Matt Eberflus. They brought in the GM uh, Ryan Poles, who was a scouting and recruitment department head for the Chiefs for 20 years. His last spot was the scouting and recruiting department, but he had been with the Chiefs for 20 years. Basically, I guess they were hoping that they could rebuild the Chiefs in Chicago using Justin Fields, and that's not going to work. He's not the same player as Patrick Mahomes, but he's not terrible. That's the confounding thing is, he's got his 60% completion percentage. Mind you, a lot of that is like screens and short game and all that stuff. But the team itself, is kind of built to be a running team, but they went out and got traded for these wide receivers, and nobody can figure out what they're thinking at this point. So, the question that the front office truly has is, do you blow it up, or do you build around this young player that is going to get the fan base excited when you give him enough of a team around him to make him be successful, and build him up for success? Or do you just blow it up and trade him away to get more picks, and then go back to the top 5 draft pick, and hopefully get another quarterback, and you know rebuild, doing the same thing over and over again? And forgive me while I you know do the same thing that every Bears fan has done for the past 15 years. Yeah, that spot on impression in my opinion.
Mhm.
But the answer is, you build around the guy. You have to, take your assets and get him an offensive line, get a defensive line to help, negate the other team's offense. But at least an offensive line can help the defense by not keeping them on the field the entire game, from a, three and out after three and out after three and out after three and out. Oh, big run, 80-yard touchdown run by Justin Fields. You know, so they're spending so much time on the field that the defense is getting worn out. If you have a good offensive line with Justin Fields behind you, you're going to be successful. I mean, that is the Eagles formula. And hey, what do you know? That works.
Mhm.
Do it, because you have that kind of player. You do not have a Justin Herbert back there, flinging it all over the field. You have the Jalen Hurts guy, the guy that's going to be dynamic in both the run and pass game, and you've got to work around that. And that's what they, in my opinion, at this point in the season, they need to be looking at doing going forward after the season.
Yep, I fully agree. I mean, Joe Alt should be there. There should be a circle around his name of who they're drafting this year. I mean, they're going to have 2 top 5 picks, if I'm correct, with the trade that they did last year. So,
Mm-hmm.
Joe Alt should definitely be one of them. So, but we'll see. Bears, they have been failing as a team lately, and if they continue to do that, they probably won't draft him. So, but a team that just has not recovered since a 28-3 choke. That's Atlanta Falcons. And David, I mean, uh, how are things looking for them?
Things aren't looking so good, man. And if y'all saw the recent Bucks versus Falcons game, we did everything we could in our power to give Atlanta the game. Like I literally tweeted in the Falcons Twitter page replies. I said we try giving y'all the game, but I guess you guys don't accept Christmas gifts. Okay, like are we all in agreement here that Arthur Smith is a complete moron? I mean, if you want to know why their best weapons aren't being utilized, it's because Arthur Smith is an idiot. Like, I don't understand how you draft Kyle Pitts at number 4. You draft a tight end at number 4, which is unheard of, and you barely utilize him at all. And how in the world did Arthur Smith even get a job as a head coach anyway? Like, what was he was like what the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, and what did he do there? Just call running plays for the most physically dominant running back in the game. Guys, I think all of us could have been the offensive coordinator for the Titans at that time, right? But you know what's funny? I, I say all this and I'm trashing the Falcons, but there's a chance that they could still win the NFC South because, as we've talked about before, the NFC South is a trash division. I mean, my Bucks are on top right now. We've won 3 in a row, but expect the unexpected when it comes to the NFC South. But it's not just Arthur Smith. I mean, Desmond Ritter is just he's just not a good quarterback, guys. I mean, they're not going to go anywhere without him, and or they're not going to go anywhere with him. Excuse me. They're not going to go anywhere with him. And you can imagine that more and more every day that Falcons fans are certainly missing Matt Ryan. No doubt the best quarterback that they have ever had. So,
Yeah. Now he's in the booth calling games. But I don't know if you guys saw, but it's confirmed, and that's Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. And for the fans that are watching, no, it is not confirmed or breaking news. It is fake news. But earlier this week and today, the Chargers did announce that they are looking at Jim Harbaugh to be their next coach, and simultaneously, the NCAA has now announced new allegations. And this is not with the sign stealing scandal. This is a different COVID year scandal with Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. It's a recruiting scandal. That was just announced today. If I'm Jim Harbaugh, I am getting the hell out of Ann Arbor, and I'm getting as far away as I can from that. Well, 2,242 miles seems pretty far, and that is a distance from Ann Arbor to Los Angeles.
mhm.
Harbaugh, I am booking that ticket. I am signing with the Chargers, and they have a lot of reasons why you should sign with them, but right now, the number one is get the hell out of the college football. I mean, it is a witch hunt happening right now with Jim Harbaugh, and it sucks to see. Jim Harbaugh is a really good guy. He really is. But the NCAA, with all these regulations they have that they just want that they're throwing down, it just seems like it's going more and more towards him. So if I'm him, I hope that he does great in the college football playoffs. Shoot, I even hope that he could win just to, it's almost like flipping the double bird and then getting out. So, Chargers, they obviously are on the hunt for a new head coach, and he should be your number one guy, especially right now. You could probably get him pretty easily. And
Well, and Matthew, you look at you look at Jim Harbaugh. I mean, Jim Harbaugh was also a very successful head coach, and also just another point to add, he did coach Stanford and the 49ers, so he's got familiarity with the state of California. But like I said, he was a very successful head coach, and he won games with Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. Not exactly elite quarterbacks. If he goes to the Chargers, he has never had a quarterback like Justin Herbert ever.
yeah.
So I think this would be a phenomenal fit if Jim Harbaugh goes there.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously still to be determined, but to see a guy like Justin Herbert there as your quarterback who needs an actual head coach, who needs a mentor, I can't see a better fit than that. So Herbert, they have made it clear that he is their guy. They gave him a massive extension, which at the time made him the highest paid player in the NFL, but now he's 2 or 3, so it's still not that bad, but
We also have to
he,
look at the Chargers. Them spending that money on the players. Are they going to take that kind of route with the coaching staff? Are
well,
they willing to open the checkbook for them as well?
that's the tough part. So this new GM is going to be in over his head. Unfortunately, he has a huge hurdle to pretty much get over in his first year. The Chargers, as of now, based on projections, and actually projections were worse than what they expected, they're going to need to shed $41 million to pretty much make the salary this next year because they are that much over the salary cap. But on top of that 41 million, they still have to shed another 27 million for their draft picks. So the Chargers have a lot of issues when it comes to right now with their salary cap. So expect some big names like Mike Williams to most likely be cut. Maybe Eric Kendricks, Corey Lindsey, he's probably set to retire here soon, or they're going to cut him. They need to shed money, so there's going to be some restructures and some contracts as well. This isn't new. Teams do this every year. They have to restructure contracts. They have to find a way to clear space. But the Chargers and their new GM is going to have a massive hurdle to get over when it comes to that. So, um, it, Jim Harbaugh isn't necessarily going to come cheap, but maybe he will with wanting to get out of college football. I mean, it could be one of those things that it was just a perfect time for the Chargers to get him. So we won't find that out until maybe after the 1st. I mean, January 1st, you got the New Year's Six Bowl. If Alabama pulls that one off, Jim Harbaugh's looking for a job the next day. If Michigan pulls that off, he's not looking for a job until after the national title game. So Chargers, that's who I'm looking for. So for as far as next year, that's your main thing. Get your guy at head coach, and then make that offensive line better.
Yeah, and if you can't see that the NCAA clearly has it for Jim Harbaugh, you're either a Michigan State fan, an Ohio State fan, or a dumbass.
Yeah, one or the other. But um, another team that needs help on that offensive line is the Carolina Panthers. Ed, I'm sure that
Offensive line, my brother in Christ, they need help everywhere.
We see a recurring theme here. Offensive line.
and head coaches.
What do you know? And Matthew, to your point, the Carolina Panthers are actually in a better financial situation going into this next salary cap year than most of these other teams, because right now they have cleared $40 million, and we'll see what happens after the season takes place. So how they shed that roster, but when you're talking about the Panthers themselves right now, they're on their interim coach, Chris Tabor, which was their special teams coordinator. Scott Fitterer was basically placed in as the GM, coming from spending a lot of time in Seattle. But everybody's talking about David Tepper, the owner of the team. He is the one that made the call on drafting Bryce Young instead of C.J. Stroud. He is the one that made the call, and he is all about I know what's best for my team, because it is his team. I can't deny that part. But as far as him being a true football man, let your football people do football things. Be the owner, be Robert Kraft, let football people do football things. Now, I will give him this. He has completely separated the business side and the football side, because if you look at, even looking at their website, they have two completely different sections for their front office for the business side of the NFL versus the football side of the NFL. So I get it as far as that is concerned, but David, go have a drink, buddy. Let's let the adults talk. Just sign the checks and make sure that everything works out fine. That's all you really need to do. Uh, and you were saying about the offensive line. Just recapping them real quick. They have 7 offensive linemen on the active roster. Only one is a center. And 4 of these 7 have been in the NFL 2 years or less. That is not a lot of experience to be able to handle the pass rushers that this league is providing at this time. And when you're talking about, a number 1 pick in Bryce Young, who is undersized, you can't shy away from that part. He's a little bit undersized, but he is a phenomenal talent. He knows how to win. He knows how to think the game through. But if he does not have more than 2 seconds to think, then he's not going to be able to get the ball where it needs to be. Just plain and simple as that. And the bickering that took place about him being drafted, that everything in a organization goes from the top down. It all rolls downhill. So it's all been turmoil from the top all the way down to the players on the field. And my goodness, this game that they played last week, where they gave up the 1 touchdown and won 9-7, that may have taken football back about 25, 35 years, because that was atrocious. That was, I don't know, that was like old school Saints versus I don't know, old school Atlanta Falcons before Bartkowski showed up. I mean, it was just not fun to watch unless you're looking for fantasy points, and even then, you're throwing cold sodas at the TV screen, trying to get some fantasy points to come from those players, and because they just weren't there. But in the end, they need to figure out a better way to handle their roster more than anything else, uh, because they've got a quarterback, they've got some cap space. They need to be able to work that roster to make it feasible, because it's not going to take much to win in the NFC South. Uh, but at my goodness, 2-12, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's that is a atrocious team in a atrocious division. To not even be competitive in that division means you've got some looking up to do and you've got some work to do. It's time to roll
Well,
up your sleeves and do it.
Well, Ed, I think you're on the right path here. I mean, I think for the Panthers, it does go back to the top. I mean, David Tepper has been nothing but a disaster since taking the team over from Jerry Richardson. Now, was Jerry Richardson the best owner in the NFL? Probably not. But the one thing that you cannot say is that the Panthers did not have stability under Richardson. They absolutely had stability under Richardson. And Jerry Richardson was a North Carolina man through and through. He created the Panthers. Like that was his baby. And you gotta think that Jerry is rolling in his grave right now with the complete joke that David Tepper has turned that team into.
Well, and you got to think this is an organization that's already been to two Super Bowls, even though they were just started in '95. I
Yeah.
mean, that is an impressive history in such a short amount of time.
Yes, it is. But short amount of time and making Super Bowls is well, it's the New England Patriots. They've done that a lot in the 21st century. So, David, what's looking like there for them next year?
Well, guys, I think what we're seeing from the Patriots is I think we're seeing what I think pretty much all of us knew about Bill Belichick deep down is that he is a genius when it comes to defense, but he is absolutely clueless when it comes to offense. And we've talked about him before. And I do believe that he is going to be told to step down. I think it's going to be a situation where Robert Kraft has a private meeting with him, where Robert Kraft says, "Listen, Bill, we're not going anywhere here, and I think you know that, but you've done so much for our program. You've done so much for Foxborough, the whole area of Boston, that I want to give you the opportunity to step down. But mark my words, if you don't step down, I will be forced to make a change here." And listen, guys, how old is Belichick? Like he's got to be in his late 60s or early 70s, right?
72, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, 72. And I think I mentioned this before as well. The man has nothing left to prove. I mean, he's won 6 Super Bowls, which I don't know if that's the most Super Bowl titles for a head coach. It might be, but it is. Okay, cool. But yeah, like, buddy, you've won 6 Super Bowls. I mean, I understand that maybe you're trying to chase Don Shula's record, okay? But who gives a crap when you've won all those Super Bowls? You've won a bunch of games. Like, just step down already. And it's obvious that you're not going anywhere without Tom Brady. Certainly, at the very least, guys, Bill Belichick should step down as the general manager, okay? As I said, I will never question Bill's ability to evaluate defense, to coach defense, because if you look at the Patriots, it's been a disaster show for them, but their defense has still been performing pretty well. Not surprising because defense is Bill Belichick's specialty. But the guy just needs to step down as GM, man, because he is like he just he's not good when it comes to offense. You know, I mean, he had Tom Brady mask his deficiencies when it comes to offense. Now that Brady isn't there anymore, Belichick has his hands tied now. But yeah, like I said, guys, I think Belichick should just retire now at this point because he has nothing left to prove. I mean, Matthew, if you were in Belichick's shoes, like you're old, you've won a bunch of Super Bowl titles, you've won a bunch of games, wouldn't you want to step down at this point? Just spend time with your family now. You wouldn't you want to do that?
I definitely would, and we're kind of asking the same question when it comes to Nick Saban in college football. But yeah, I definitely would. But I do have a wild scenario that I'll end the show with. So I'll let you continue on this subject, but I will end the show with a crazy scenario.
I've got nothing left to say about Belichick and the Patriots, man. I feel like I've already said what I needed to, and I really want to hear your scenario now.
Yeah, I don't know what it is lately, but we've been hearing all these crazy rumors of Belichick to the Chargers. And it is crazy. Belichick to the Chargers, and that's not necessarily my scenario. Because everyone is saying Belichick to be the head coach of the Chargers. But for me, what if he's the GM for the Chargers and Harbaugh as the head coach? This is just a crazy scenario here, and folks, I want you to, let me know your thoughts, because if I should be an owner, if I should just stick to what I'm doing here behind camera. But put in the comments what you think on that. Keep in mind, we always think of Bill Belichick as the coach because the head coach for the Patriots, but he's also been the GM for the Patriots, and well, the Chargers are in need of a GM. They're also in need of a head coach. I would want Jim Harbaugh to be my guy as head coach, but what about Belichick over there as a general manager for them?
No,
Well, if that
just send Belichick's dog.
happens,
Yeah, I mean he
yeah.
did great. I mean that guy on camera, that dog, he knew exactly what he was doing.
Well, maybe, and I don't know if this has ever happened before, but like in that case, maybe the Chargers should hire two GMs. Okay, let Belichick handle drafting defensive players, keep him the hell away from anything that has to do with offense.
Except for offensive line. He has had a good history with offensive line,
Yeah.
drafting
That's true.
and signing, and that's what the Chargers need. If they could have a healthy team, the Chargers, offensively, they're set.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they need to have a healthy team. So if they have that, then you don't have to worry about him drafting offensive players. He'd draft these fifth round linebackers, from South Hardman Institute of Technology, and they would ball out. So that's where I'm like, it almost kind of makes sense, but that's why it's just a crazy scenario. I doubt it will happen, but I've seen crazy things. I mean, what was it? Was it Mike or Matt Mayock, who ended up becoming the GM for the Raiders? I mean, he was just an analyst. And the Raiders were like, let's just take a chance, but that paid off horribly.
Or
Bobby
her.
Beathard did the same thing.
Yeah,
Well, and don't. What about Herm Edwards becoming the head coach for the Arizona State Sun Devils? Look how
practice,
that turned out.
practice. We're talking about practice, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what our viewers out there are thinking for their team in the next cycle, off season. Or is there something that you're already looking at, as you go into the latter half of the season, into the off season? What are you thinking is your team needs to do?
My Steelers need a lot, but we'll talk about that a different time. But they probably should have been on this list, but it's okay. We left them off. But a lot of question marks. So yes, please put that in the comment section. But also, if you hit that like, subscribe button, and share these videos, well, we would greatly appreciate that, guys. But until next time, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.